All right. Well, good evening, everybody. It was so nice to be able to connect with some of you ahead of tonight's event at the reception. Thank you for being a part of it. And welcome to Stan Talks 9, right? That's what it says on there? Unbelievable. This is absolutely one of my favorite evenings because it really brings out the whole extended family of Stanley, connecting us across 50 plus years of our history, and that is pretty extraordinary. A warm welcome to all of our alumni who are back here. It was fun seeing you roam the hallways here and that you once haunted, and thinking about our alumni parents, having them here. Alumni teachers we have back who've taught some of our alumni who are here today. But also, and our current teachers, our current parents, we even have some prospective parents here, and just thinking about all of you are at different points in the journey of the Stanley story, and is pretty amazing. And this night will go a long ways to reinforce how amazing and magical that is. So, also want to shout out to two other people: Tim Berry, our second head of school, who was here for 25 years and has played a huge role in shaping this school. It's so great to have Tim back, who's here all the time. And Bruce Dabosky, our longtime alumni parent and board member who founded Stan Talks. Thank you, Bruce, for being here. I think Bruce's stress level is significantly lower here tonight for the first time since he gets to enjoy it as an audience member. And so thrilled for him to be part of this too. So thank you for being part of tonight's Ultimate Stanley Mission moment. It really is an extraordinary time. And I'll be back a little later to return for the second part of the evening after we hear from our alumni, but to honor this year's Spirit of Stanley Award recipient who could not get, we can't give him enough applause. Chris Lewis, our beloved, extraordinary teacher who embodies Stanley. I can't wait for us to honor him. But for now, I'm thrilled to hand it off to another alum, Laura Gibson, class of 2001, who's been working with our three speakers and will be our MC for the night. So Laura, please join us on the stage.
Thank you, Sumant. It's been so fun. I love this. It's not really a job, but it feels like it's just so fun taking over from Bruce. Last year, Bruce and I co-hosted Stan Talks, and it's a really interesting thing to be able to meet three people. So I'm not quite old enough to have taught Kurt and Lauren and Ben. In a couple years, I think I'll be old enough to have taught that age of people. But anyway, they're more like my peers right now. So it's been really fun to just like meet somebody on Zoom and then dive into their life story. It's a privilege that you don't often get to do. And I really want to thank the three of you for being so vulnerable and open to just like jumping straight into it and going through the process of building your stories together. It's just been such a treat. Let's just start. So the first speaker we have up is Lauren Kozowski. And yes, she is from the class of 2009, and she attended Stanley from kindergarten through 8th grade. Actually, all three of our speakers were K through 8 kids this year. She went on to be the valedictorian of St. Mary's and then got her bachelor's from CU Boulder in ecology and evolutionary biology. But she didn't stop there. She has 2 master's degrees, one from Harvard in human development and psychology, where she studied the impacts of trauma on developing brains and the positive impacts of social emotional learning and a sense of belonging in the classroom. Lauren was also a 3-4-5 teacher at Stanley for 1 year. And yes, all of those were lucky enough to have her for 1 year in their classrooms. And she is currently founding a new public charter school in Colorado Springs, which is based on Stanley's model. And it's called the Spruce Community School. And from the moment I met Lauren, I was struck by her warmth, generosity of spirit, and the sense that she truly cares not only about whoever is sitting across from her, but also about those who have been excluded from the table in the first place. Please welcome Lauren Kozowski.
That good? Okay, sorry.
You're okay. Thank you, Jason. Oh, it's on? Oh, fabulous. Okay. Let's check the clicker now. Oh, okay. Fabulous. Okay. Thanks for being here. I'm really excited to go first and also just kick us off. My journey at Stanley began in 2000 as a kindergartner in Allison and Katie's K12 class. As you can see, I was super close to figuring out how to smile. I didn't spell my last name. Yep, super close. On a typical weekday morning choice time, children cavorted around colorful tables to engage in an incredibly peculiar and unique activity, handling human cadaver brains. It was my childhood best friend, Anna Melman's, turn for a choice activity. Her physician father brought in plastic bags, non-latex gloves, and a 5-gallon white bucket that just so happened to be filled with formaldehyde-preserved brains. I have since looked at doing this activity with my students, but I have run into numerous complications, health code regulations, and restrictions. But yes, rules have always been different in the Technicolor classrooms of Stanley. Only at Stanley would 5-, 6-, and 7-year-old children be given the opportunity to hold, analyze, and sketch human brains. Typically, this is something you wait until medical school to do. And I can confirm that this 3-pound organ has a... Little did my second grade self know that the brain would become the focus of my entire professional career. From studying learning processes, educational environments, investigating the neuroscience of trauma, and how we create restorative practices to ensure that our classrooms are healing. Our story begins with the expression on my face in this picture. It symbolizes the magic of light bulb moments. How can we create more moments like this for all children, regardless of where they're from, how much wealth is in their family, or whether or not they look like me? My career has been dedicated to understanding what makes Stanley so special and how we can create more places like it. This perspective is formed as 9 years as a student on this campus, 6 years as a teacher, one of which, Amy, was in Ponderosa Pine as a 3-4-5 teacher, and there's a couple of my students that I got to see too, 4 years as a graduate researcher of learning sciences, and most recently, a school founder. Throughout our time together, we're going to explore the concept of rediscovering what my elementary school self already knew, but lost sight of. In particular, we'll use the values of courage, kindness, and curiosity. These are the values I learned here. They are the values that helped me through the toughest challenge of my life, and they are the foundation for the school I will open in 2026 in Colorado Springs, based on Stanley, called Spruce Community School. The vision of Spruce Community School is that together we will inspire curious, kind, and courageous lifelong learners who are equally prepared to listen and lead. Let's begin with courage. We had a lot of good pictures. It was a crisp fall mid-morning in Colorado. I was a new 3rd grader in Allison's 3-4-5 classroom, and we had just arrived for our first field trip of the year, a ropes course. I remember the buzz of excitement leading up to the excursion that quickly dissipated when we saw the height of our first task, and we were given a helmet. And I remember, why do we need a helmet? But I did know that it conveyed that there was a level of danger in our upcoming task. The first task was a trapeze jump, meaning one person had to climb to the top of this very narrow pole, place 2 feet next to each other, jump and soar to a swinging beam. Who wants to go first? Smiles completely disappear as students shuffled and hid in the shadows of one another. I raised my hand. To my surprise and my classmates, I had never considered myself brave. I was shy and observant. I didn't yet know that courage could exist in everyday quiet moments. At the top, my legs shook violently, a little bit like right now. Doubt and dread became my closest companions, and louder than my own stories of doom were my classmates, the new ones below, cheering my name. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and I jumped, all while my legs continued to shake. This memory continues to be the basis of my understanding of courage. Sometimes you have to climb on your own, but it never means you are alone. Courage has nothing to do with absolving fear and everything to do with jumping in its presence, shaky legs included. My understanding of courage was tested in 2021 when at 26 I found a lump in my throat. All the doctors were like, "You're fine, you're young, you're healthy." But deep in my gut, I knew what was confirmed in a CT scan: cancer. The treatment was 12 rounds of chemotherapy in the midst of a global pandemic. All while I was undergoing the most intense adverse experience of my life, I was researching how trauma impacts developing brains and our capacity to learn. I experienced firsthand how fear can hijack our ability to think clearly, to learn effectively. There was symmetry to my circumstances and my studies. I understood on a personal level what some of my students might have felt in school, that overwhelming sense of feeling unsafe when survival takes precedence over learning. In both my research and in my reality, one truth became very clear. Caring relationships are what cultivate resilience. People, not professions, are what create our positivity. My third grade ropes course self had it all figured out in terms of courage. The overcoming of obstacles is often thought of individual grit, the solo climb to the top of the pole. But in reality, it's the collective effort of standing on the shoulders of loved ones, all while they are cheering your name and wearing harnesses and helmets themselves. Courage is in the small acts of placing one foot in front of the other and confronting our fear while our community chants our name. So how do we teach courage? That it's not about being fearless, but about moving forward despite fear to kids. It starts with creating environments where they feel supported, where taking risks is celebrated, and where they are deeply known by their peers. Kindness. I was one of the lucky students who had the gift of Allison's teaching for 5 years instead of 3. And typical in Stanley fashion, there weren't many prescribed rules in her classroom, but there was, however, a plaque framed at the front of the class that formed the foundation of our classroom culture. A quote by Maya Angelou: "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel." And some of you who had Allison are saying that along with me. Kindness was the value that saved my life in chemotherapy. Cancer as a healthy 20-something felt utterly cruel. Professionally, I was in my dream graduate program. Personally, I was falling in love with my now fiance. My defining feature has always been my positivity. And throughout treatment, I would look in the mirror for some resemblance of the person that I used to be. Physically, I couldn't find her or see her through the hair loss. Mentally, I couldn't feel her through chemo fog and exhaustion. And spiritually, I was reckoning with the idea that everything happens for a reason. It was the contagious actions, whether they were simple or significant, of family, friends, or complete strangers that chose to see the best in me even when I couldn't see it myself, that gave me this mantra and purpose. If nothing else, be kind. And through this, I began to remember how to be gentle and loving with myself and spread that to others. Kindness is contagious. And it's contagious because of the memorable feelings of joy and connection that it creates. When I see these pictures, I'm reminded of my defining feature, joy. I see the little girl who's always smiled with 2 rows of teeth because she can't contain it. But now I understand that joy is not dependent on good things happening, but joy is a conscious decision to cultivate moments of compassion. So how do we teach kindness? Well, it's not through isolated moments or checklists. It's by recognizing that all learning is inherently social and emotional. It's about creating classrooms where we value empathy as we do mathematical concepts. It's where listening is just as crucial as speaking. Finally, curiosity. Post-treatment and for my school, I define curiosity as when we explore each day as if it's our first. Throughout treatment and survivorship, I have struggled with the common saying of live each day as if it's your last. It put a tremendous weight and pressure on each day. The difference between living each day as if it's first or last is wonder. Wonder relies on surprise and humility. It's the presence that I notice the most when I walk the halls of Stanley. Children explore the brilliance of each day, not with a sense of knowing, but a sense of what might be. How do we teach curiosity? Well, Stanley has that figured out. In their own words, students do not need to be made to learn, but allowed to explore their world. We teach curiosity by stepping back as adults and allowing our children to be the experts and live each day as if it's our first. My mom can attest to the validity of this last story. It was my first day at kindergarten, and I rode a unicorn-themed bicycle. Shout out to kids of the 90s who may have had bikes like this. And I had a bright yellow Sony cassette tape clipped to my back. It was blaring Aladdin's A Whole New World. My mother was behind me sobbing as her firstborn pedaled her way to primary school, singing the lyrics the entire way. A Whole New World is a fitting theme song for the Bulldogs, especially considering that all of Stanley's K-12 classrooms are equipped with their own magic carpets, where the most of learning takes place. Stanley has always been the place for me where the lyrics of this song ring true. Children have the power and autonomy to explore their world with awe and wonder. They have the opportunity to feel that their voice is valuable and important, where learning is shining, shimmering, and splendid. It's a place with a fantastic point of view. Every child deserves to learn in such a world where they are known, loved, and seen by a community, so they feel comfortable enough to learn with curiosity, lead with kindness, and leap with courage. Thank you.
Yes, Lauren. Oh, hot mic. Hello. Sorry. The next speaker we have is Kurt Olson from the class of 2007. And Kurt actually is sandwiched right in between these two, where he knows Ben and Lauren from being right in the middle, which is kind of an interesting thing. But he went to Stanley from K through 8. His most formative memories from BPS were the 10 seasons he spent at summer at Stanley, where he developed his love of theater and learned how to work as part of a team. After BPS, he attended Colorado Academy for high school, and then he went on to Tufts University to get a Bachelor's of Science in Cognitive Science and Music Engineering. He also has a Master's in Organizational Leadership from CU Boulder, and he currently is the Vice President of Operations at Custom Channels, a music technology company in Denver. Kurt is reflective, creative, even-keeled, and he keeps very busy with community theater, ultra running, snowshoeing, and his 2-year-old daughter. Let's give it up for Kurt Olson.
I have to follow Lauren. Okay, we'll do our best. One note before we get started. Can everybody see that exit sign back there? Good, because it's a fire code if that's covered. This is an important point, okay? So let me take you back in time, 20 years ago, 2004, to this, well, wait, where's that exit sign? To this very spot. Let's have a chat with an aspiring young artist. So, young man, what do you want to do when you grow up? I don't know. Okay, well, what do you enjoy doing? What are you passionate about? I love to act. I love to play music. I want to perform. Well, that's great. That's exactly what you should do. You should follow your passion. Do what you love. Now, you may have guessed that this aspiring actor is myself. And yes, my voice probably was that high back then. And yes, I had hair. But most importantly, yes, I did receive that advice. Follow your passion. It's such commonly used advice that we've all been guilty of giving or receiving at some point in our life, right? I'm not saying this is bad advice. And in fact, it's some of the best advice I received at a young age. But I would argue that this advice is incomplete. See, if I were to give this advice now, I might say, follow your passion because you never know where it might lead. Now, this picture is taken from one of many summers I spent at Stanley, specifically in the theater program. And these summers at Stanley were such an amazing outlet to pursue my passions. But they were also great reminders that the pursuit of your passion doesn't necessarily confine you to any one discipline. And there was no better example of this than the teachers and counselors themselves, right? During the school year, they were science, math, and history teachers. But in the summers, they were given an opportunity to professionally still pursue other passions, things they loved, theater, music, sports, right? All of these things, they exemplified that a professional pursuit of a passion didn't need to be a full-time career. And this really stuck with me. So let's return to this photo. And I promise, Laura can attest to this, I chose this photo before knowing who the other speakers were here tonight. The reason I say that is because there's another young performer in this photo. And he's here with us tonight. You will hear from him shortly. And guess what? He is a professional, accomplished performer. I won't speak for you, Ben, but I do think this actually illustrates my point even better because I'm sure we both received that advice at this age. Follow your passion. Do what you love. And that's exactly what we both did with 100% of our energy. Now, I may not have made a career out of being a musician or an actor, but the pursuit of doing what I love is what led me to what I would refer to as a passion-adjacent career. So, what got me here? Well, in middle school, I was introduced to this book. This is Your Brain on Music. Some of you may have read this. And it's a fascinating study of the human brain, the music, and I was always a good science student. I definitely leaned towards STEM curriculum. I was also a musician. I learned piano at a very young age, and I never even considered that you could combine these things. This is the first example of a passion-adjacent area of interest that I didn't even know existed, right? So with that in mind, I went to high school, and I was on a bit of a dual trajectory. I kept up with science-focused curriculum, but I also kept performing in theater and music. And when it was time to apply for colleges, I wanted to look for a school with a strong music program, but also an accredited engineering and science department. Maybe someday I would have to choose, but I figured why not keep my options open? So I landed at Tufts University in Boston, and doing what I love was still important to me. When I got there, I decided, well, I don't know what I'm going to study yet. I don't know what I'm going to be when I graduate, but I might as well do something I love. See, in high school, I often accompanied choir performances, musical theater classes, and they had a work-study job available for a rehearsal pianist. So I auditioned. What better way to do what you love than to also get paid to do it? I did not get that job. The feedback, it was challenging to hear, but fair. My sight reading ability just wasn't quite up to par with what they were looking for. So there it is. Dreams dashed, stopped in my tracks, talk over, right? Well, of course not quite. Because at Tufts, there was the second example of a passion-adjacent field of study that I did not know existed, music engineering. See, they had an entire department dedicated to the intersection of music and technology. So I started taking computer science courses. I programmed musical interfaces. I worked as a sound and recording engineer. And I even built electronic instruments with mechanical and electrical engineering students. And this passion-adjacent area was an amazing complement to music psychology, the one that had been introduced to me in that book so many years earlier. And as it happened, Tufts had a music psychology professor who was cited in that book numerous times as a leading researcher. So I approached him and I, of course, fawned over and said, "Oh my gosh, I love your research, all this stuff." And I proposed a research idea combining everything I had done in my undergraduate time, music engineering, music psychology, performance. And that research was called Brain Automated Chorales, or BACH for short. Yes, music nerds out there, I can hear you. Now, I designed and developed software that would assess the sight reading abilities of novice piano students. In real time, we would dynamically adjust the difficulty of the sheet music that they were reading based on real live brain data from their frontal lobe cortex. And you're probably thinking, this is what you needed during that audition, right? Well, sure, but if I had gotten that job and become an accompanist, a performer, I'm not sure it would have led me here, right? And I certainly don't regret that. My senior year, my research was published and adapted into a chapter for a textbook. And I kept finding other ways to pursue doing what I love. I arranged music for and performed in various music ensembles, played in bands, and I did redeem myself, don't worry, as an accompanist in a few student productions. I also had internships at Spotify and a small music company here in Colorado. And I had come to realize that maybe a passion-adjacent career actually was a better fit for me, because it would allow me to pursue all of these interests and still find time to carve out ones that were special to me. So after graduating, I joined that small music company in Colorado full-time. I came back and I still found ways to pursue what I love. I joined a community theater production. I auditioned for the role of Horton. And after 6 weeks of gallivanting around in a gray elephant onesie, I met the one. So this right here should be proof enough that you should follow your passion, right? I mean, look where it got me. I was also approached by my former high school drama teacher, and I was hired as an accompanist for their spring show. And at this time, I had completely come to terms with the fact that I was not going to be a professional actor or musician. And in fact, the job that I took at that small music company here in Colorado had turned out to be remarkably fulfilling. See, Custom Channels, which is the company I joined 10 years ago, is not a music company in the traditional sense. I don't get to play music at my desk every day. But we employ the psychology of music in order to provide playlists for thousands of brands and businesses all over the country. Spotify for business, if you will. And when they hired me as a music engineer. I got to use all of this knowledge that I had built up to build tools for managing data, music data, for building and curating playlists. And that confidence and ability to adapt that I had gained through acting and performing led to a management career. It really had a positive impact on that trajectory. I got a master's degree in organizational leadership, and now as the owners contemplate retirement, they've made me vice president and soon to be owner-operator. And chances are that many of you in this room have heard the playlists that my team and I have curated for some of your favorite brands and businesses. So I think it's safe to say that this version of me wouldn't have ever dreamed of a career like this. Sure, he would be happy to hear that I'm still performing and playing, But this passion-adjacent career trajectory was only made possible not because I let my passions dictate the outcome, but rather lead me to something that I didn't even know was there in the first place. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention my newest and greatest passion, my daughter. Of course, we do play music, perform, act, dance together. And my wife and I, we always encourage her to pursue her passions, whether it's her ballet, toddler ballet classes, playing music, or reading. Because remember, at the end of the day, you need to pursue your passions because you never know where they might lead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kurt. Oh, these are so good. Glad you guys get to hear him now too. Okay, the third speaker we have tonight / singer is Ben Brady, and he is from the class of 2005. He also attended Stanley K through 8, and his fondest memory was of playing Bottom in A Midsummer Night's Dream in Lily Newcomb's drama class. As a drama teacher, it's nice to hear that. No. Ben then went to Denver East High School and on to the University of Michigan to receive a bachelor's in vocal performance. As a professional opera singer, Ben has sung all over the country, from Santa Fe to Eugene, Oregon, to an upcoming production at the Metropolitan Opera in New York City. Yeah. Working with him over the past few months, I am struck by how kind, humble, and funny Ben is. And a unique fact about Ben, his passion for Dungeons and Dragons knows no bounds. I'm serious, you will have to come back for another time for his second stand talk about D&D. Please welcome back to the Stanley stage, Ben Brady.
Thank you, Laura. The eye of man hath not heard. The ear of man hath not seen. Man's hand is not able to taste, his tongue to conceive, nor his heart to report what my dream was. Bottom, Midsummer Night's Dream. Who am I? When I first met with Laura Gibson back in October to discuss this stand talk, she very much encouraged me to talk not as much about what the typical opera singer path is, but more about myself, my own experience, my own journey. And ruminating on this assignment, a familiar anxiety came rushing back to me. That from my parent-teacher conferences here at Stanley. Mom and Dad on either side, and Tim Barrier smiling across the table from me. Don't get me wrong, these were very positive experiences. So why is it that I, an experienced performer, a professional attention seeker, was and still am so hesitant to talk about myself? Who am I? Well, easy things. 2005, graduated from BPS, K through 8, went to Denver East High School, graduated in 2009, studied vocal performance at the University of Michigan, lived in the Bay Area for many years, eventually trained as a young artist with San Francisco Opera's Marilla program, also was an apprentice at Santa Fe Opera for several years, and now I sing opera all over the place professionally. This is me as Pulitzer in our Newsies production, 6th grade, probably right over here somewhere. That's me in our 5th grade class, Jane and Jason's class. I'm way at the end, if you can spot me. I think that sums me up in a lot of ways. Below that is me and Lily in one of doing who knows what sort of improv or something in some theater scene. And then this is me in high school and that in a play with that young woman who has turned out to be my wife. Okay, but who am I? An actor. So when I was first diving into this assignment and digging through old bins of memories and pictures of my youth, I asked my mom what she thought about this quandary, and she shared some really valuable insight. She said, well, Ben, when you were a little kid, you were really very shy. You were very hesitant to talk to strangers, and you would hide behind my legs all the time. And it was really on the stage at Stanley when we saw a whole side of you come alive. You would step into these roles, no matter how small, and you would really come into your own. And it really was BPS that encouraged me at an early age to be who I am. I love to act. I love to be funny. I love telling stories. I love being scary, and I love making believe. And more importantly, I've come to realize I love making others believe. Musician. Music is in my blood. My mother's a singer. My father was an electric bass player. My grandmother was a concert pianist. My grandfather was an opera singer, and the list goes on. It's really part of who I am, and more so than anything else, I think music is my culture, my heritage. It really defines who I am. But it wasn't always the case. I didn't really sing when I was young. I didn't practice for piano lessons. I kind of had to discover music on my own, sitting at the electric keyboard, composing and playing with different ideas, always with headphones on so no one in the house could hear what I was doing. I eventually got into musicals and choirs and my rock star phase, which has by no means ended, and here I am. Nerd. I'm a nerd. I always have been and I always will be. It was Danny Ladd, first grade Toby Zemsky's class, who taught me Magic the Gathering, and again a shout out to BPS for making sure I was never tormented for this hobby. I love everything Wizards, Lord of the Rings, as Laura mentioned, Dungeons and Dragons, and role-playing games in general have become really important to me in my adult life. And I could do a whole talk on just that, but I will just say my favorite role at the table is that of the Dungeon Master, whose job it is to invent worlds and describe detailed scenes of action, and most importantly, engage the other players at the table to make decisions as their own characters. My favorite moments as a DM are when I get to help new or unsure players find out how they fit into the world and witness them come to life in the universe that we create together. And I think this very much connects to my next point. I'm a teacher. Back to that discussion with my mom, I brought up this aptitude test that I took when I was in high school, designed to help young people figure out what their career path should be. And I said to my mom, yeah, I remember my scores in music were very high, and I was very proud of this, and still am, and have used it many times to justify the pursuit of this path. But my mom said, yeah, music, but also teaching, which I had forgotten about, but it makes a lot of sense. I think, even though I love to perform, the most important thing for performing for me is helping others discover something new about themselves or the world. And I ultimately prefer to turn the spotlight to my neighbors, and especially those who don't necessarily get to stand in it all that much for themselves. Why opera? Raise your hand. Here's a little activity for you. Raise your hand if you've ever seen a live opera. Okay, nice. Okay, good. Hands down. Raise your hand if you could, don't shout it out, if you could name an opera. All right, not bad. Okay, good. Hands down. Raise your hand if you like opera. Be honest, that's fine. Hands down. One more. Raise your hand if you honestly love opera. Okay. That's my mom and my mother, by the way. I think I saw more hands in the middle school room earlier today for love opera. Why opera? Well, I had a friend ask me recently, a colleague. He said, when did you first realize you loved opera? And I was almost offended. I said, I never said I love opera. There are a lot of things I think not to love about opera. In the U.S., well, if I were to ask people for their opinions on this, list off some words they might use to describe opera, words that come to mind might be long, boring, academic, elitist. In the U.S., opera really has the reputation of being the art form for the wealthy, white, 1%ers. And there is a tremendous effort to shatter that reputation, I have to say. But there is still a great deal of truth to that. Opera houses in the U.S., top opera houses, or A houses, as they're often called based on their budget size, are still predominantly funded by wealthy donors, while ticket sales only pay to barely keep the lights on. It's an industry that we're taught as young musicians to worship in a way, to strive in our academic pursuits, in our professional relationships, and even in our artistic choices, to strive one day to set foot upon these great stages so that one day we may receive some trickling down of this insane wealth that continues to be poured into the broken, inflated machine. Why opera? I haven't answered that question yet, have I? Here's why I do opera. It's hard. JFK said about the moon landing, we didn't do it because it's easy, we did it because it's hard. Being challenged is exciting, and the greater the challenge, the more exhilarating the results of success. Imagine playing an instrument inside your own body, which requires unending technical study, immense physical effort, memorizing hours of difficult music, delivering perfectly pronounced Italian, French, German, Czech, whatever, watching the conductor, wearing a horrible wig, acting as well as any Hollywood actor, and looking as good as any Hollywood actor, or at least being comfortable with yourself when you're constantly reminded that you are not as attractive as a Hollywood actor. It's a tough balancing act, but in the moments where you really feel like you're doing it all, it's really transcendent. Music, as I mentioned, music is a part of who I am. In opera, there really is a path, especially for low voices like myself, to perform professionally into your 70s or 80s. That's a life filled with performance, and I'm all in. Theater. Opera is supposed to be theater, but it gets a bad reputation. I think I was talking to someone earlier tonight about this, but opera singers often they do what's called parking and barking is what's often called, where they just sort of stand there with this look in their eyes and they deliver the text. But you're supposed to be in a show, so I always try, as a theater kid, to put the drama at the forefront of what I do in opera. Magic. I believe that music is magic, or at least the closest thing that we can get to it on this earth. And there's something about opera, making these tremendous sounds with your body and playing with an orchestra. It's all organic and acoustic, and it's loud and as exciting as anything. It feels like being an actual wizard, and I love it. Did I mention I'm a nerd? Change. I believe pursuing this art form can bring about positive change in the world. And who doesn't want to change the world? Not only can a performance really affect an individual audience member, but we as opera singers, we get to mingle with these wealthy, important donors. We get to have dinner with them, drinks with them after the show, sit down at the table with them and share our own experiences, talk about all our gratitude, but also our qualms, our feelings about world and the future. And often these people want to listen. They want to learn. And I'm happy to teach them. What's next? Well, as I mentioned, D&D, we have a podcast that we just started releasing. So if you're into that sort of thing, check us out at The Troubadours. Episode 4 drops this Saturday. I think our biggest fan is my mother-in-law, who's sitting right here. But it's for everyone. She doesn't play D&D, but she enjoys it too. But as far as opera is concerned, my next gig is indeed at the Met. I'll be working on a production of The Magic Flute there. And then I will go on to Opera Theater St. Louis this summer, where I will be singing my first principal role in an A house, in the role of none other than Bottom in A Midsummer Night's Dream, the opera by Benjamin Britten. Very exciting. I think I first did it over there for a bunch of 3, 4, 5 kids. Is he going to sing? Do you want me to sing a little bit? Let me get a sip of water and I'll do that. What is that picture, Laura asks? Well, it's a production of Acis and Galatea, which is a Handel opera, old opera, but often those productions are set in different, modern settings. So this was supposed to be my B movie. I was like the bad guy from like a 50s science fiction movie. And in the production, I actually got to punch through a screen and walk out. And that was in Eugene where I did my last gig. And everyone's like, I remember that very well. So it made an impression. So I'll sing for you a little bit. This is indeed a little excerpt of Bottom's aria from A Midsummer Night's Dream. The eye of man was burned, the ear of man hand is not able to taste, his tongue to conceive, or his heart to report. What my dream was, what my dream was, my dream. And yet, Peter Quince, the carpenter, to write a ballad of this dream, and it shall be called Bottom's Dream. Bottom's Dream, because it hath no bottom. Thank you very much.
Wow. Three amazing stories, three incredible human beings. I thank you to Lauren, Kurt, and Ben for just sharing those wonderful experiences, for sharing the breadcrumbs of the Stanley experience that everyone in this room can connect with and relate to, that our late founder, Carolyn Hambidge, would be so proud of. Just you following your passions and just embodying the best of what Stanley is. So thank you for that. It really it's so inspiring. Many of you know I have two kids who are in TK and third grade, and just to see the ways in which this school has shaped you all is just it is inspiring, and I'm so grateful to Laura for just she does such great work behind the scenes. In case you know, Laura has been on stage as a Stand Talk speaker herself. She is an alum. She is a teacher, has been a teacher at Stanley. There are a few people who are more equipped to understand this and dive into people's stories. So thank you for this night. And now I am so thrilled to transition this night to our tradition of honoring a community member with the Spirit of Stanley Award. It has been awarded since 2017. To honor a member of our community who embodies the values of Stanley, made an indelible impact in the community and on our kids. Every year we look to the community and to our alumni and ask for ideas of who might represent that very spirit of Stanley. So tonight's recipient, Chris Lewis, joins a distinguished group of 8 past award winners whose love of children, their impact on fellow teachers, commitment to building community, and their connection to Stanley are remarkable. And I think it's such a wonderful night, knowing that our first recipient was the late Betsy Lewis, that Chris will be here tonight, to have Lynn Forstadt, David Murray, Melissa Knott, Donna Millay, Allison Neckers, Lanita Jones, John Gottesfeld, just an extraordinary group. And to have Chris be part of this, I know many of these people are in the audience today, so let's all give all of them a round of applause. I'm excited to turn over the mic here in a second to some of Chris's colleagues and former students, but it's a special night because Chris has his children here in the audience as family members, and I'm just so grateful that you're here for this night. For 38 years, Chris's Art Barn has been the most Stanley space on campus. If you were to spend, if someone said, how should I spend 5 minutes on Stanley's campus, I'd say go to Chris's Art Barn because it's the environment he creates. It's where kids learn that truly anything is possible, that their ideas matter. It's a space where wind is put into your sails, whether you're throwing pottery, building a box maze, singing karaoke, or building the world's largest and most intricate marble run. Anything can happen in that classroom, and it's where you're always reminded that you can be your and should be your most authentic self. And that is just a gift that Chris gives every day for our kids, and that our kids look forward to every day. So tonight I'm excited for us to hear from Chris, but also two of his dear colleagues and friends, Sig and Art, who have known him for 30 years. We'll also get to hear from Stephen Edwards, an alum who stays in close contact with Chris even decades out of Stanley and is now an architect. Every one of us here has our Chris Lewis stories and moments. I hope you will find time to share them with one another, with Chris, with us, even after tonight's over. So it's with great pleasure that I welcome Art and Sig to stage, our husband and wife teaching team with a combined 60 plus years of teaching at Stanley. Woo! Who have really walked alongside Chris for so much of his time at Stanley. So thank you, Sig and Art.
Well, we're supposed to keep it to 300 to 500 words. I think it's more like 300 plus 500, but here we go. You just can't sum up Chris that quickly. Okay, so thank you, everybody, and it's so great to see everyone here, and I'm so excited Chris's family's here. When you see Chris Lewis walk across the Stanley campus, you might wonder, who is this celebrity? So ask any child at Stanley to describe Chris and his art class, and this is what you'll hear. You can do whatever you want. He lets you run free. No stress. Nothing needs to get done. There's no rules, so you can really have fun. When you're in his room, your imagination flies. As parents, you're probably thinking, what the hell? This sounds like chaos. And it is. It's the very best kind of chaos. The kids will also say, Chris is creative. He's artistic. He's one of the kindest people I know. He makes everyone feel welcome. We couldn't agree more. But since we can't peer into his mind to grasp his creative genius, let's step inside the Lewis house. And then his classroom will become even clearer. Open the door and you'll be greeted by a dog or 2 or 6, followed by Chris's friends of 20 years and friends he just met. You notice you're standing on an old clear basketball backboard, a relic from Stanley. Now pull the chain hanging in the ceiling, from the ceiling, and the trap door to the basement rises up. Gaze up and you eye a couch hovering above your head, suspended in the air. Stop and take a breath and look around, and you'll see Chris's paintings gracing the walls. Over the years, a half pipe for skateboarding and a life-size cardboard replica of a 1967 Camaro have all been part of this magical house. Betsy used to famously call Chris Project Boy. A project for most of us is cleaning a closet or hanging a shelf. But for Chris, a project involves moving his entire kitchen downstairs and creating a full-size bathroom upstairs. Yet the most incredible find inside his house are Chris and Betsy's beautiful, smart, strong, and creative daughters, Daisy and Rosie, who keep Chris young, humble, and out of trouble most of the time.
If you were attempting to explain to someone what British primary philosophy is all about, you could direct them towards Piaget and Dewey's instructional approach in the hopes of explaining constructivism. Instead, save your words and your textbooks and head directly to the art garage, Chris's legendary classroom where you'll find the true heartbeat of Stanley. Children are crawling everywhere through elaborate, winding cardboard mazes. Some build massive marble runs suspended from the ceiling, while others use a microphone and boombox to belt out a karaoke tune. Glue guns breathe life into popsicle sticks that take shape in the most imaginative ways. A drum kit beckons the next percussionist to take a seat. Artists paint while potters sculpt clay. In one corner, a large cardboard guillotine chops heads as red markers leave blood. We are learning about the French Revolution, the kids exclaim. Chris's art garage is truly choice time on steroids. The garage doors are open and a cacophony of sounds come from outside. There's a workforce of mechanics that tinker with a real motorcycle that will actually kickstart in the coming days. A group of anthropologists continue to dig with the hope of finally finding Jerry's remains. Hammers pound, saws are in motion, and a power drill screeches as 2x4s and plywood take shape. The students are building a new French cafe. It's named Oui Oui's. It will soon be open for business, where they will be able to enjoy their lunch in a new dining area. Here, in Chris's world, art connects to life and becomes a way of life. One group of children leaves and another joins in, and somehow the project continues to morph and expand. Everyone's ideas are valued. Like a magical Chinese New Year's dragon, the front end doesn't know exactly what the back end is doing, but somehow it moves perfectly in unison. Chris's trust in children pushes beyond what most adults imagine possible, and in turn, the students always rise to the occasion.
Chris also started the Arts Fest, the most Stanley day of the year, uniting TK through 8th grade students in the joy of a performance. A Stanley alumni parent recently regaled us with a funny story of Chris calling to remind her, "Have your son bring his tap shoes for the Arts Fest tomorrow." After a pause, she said, "My son doesn't have any tap shoes." Chris responded, "Okay, no worries, we got this." And apparently Chris put thumbtacks in her son's shoes, and the next day he performed his tap dance. Mom had taken the day off of work to see the show, and she laughs when she says, "If you blinked, you would have missed it." Even Chris was surprised and asked the boy, "Are you sure you're done?" And he said yes. No doubt the students still received an enthusiastic round of applause and cheers. Thanks to Chris and the spirit of the Arts Fest, it doesn't matter if you perform for 2 seconds or 10 minutes. You are seen, you are heard, and you are celebrated.
Chris, it's been a privilege to work alongside you for over 30 years. Your passion, dedication, creative genius has inspired both students and teachers. Thank you for seeing the best in every child and for fostering learning through play and exploration since about 1989.
We love you and are so proud to call you our friend, our colleague, and are honored to present you with the 2025 Spirit of Stanley Award. Congratulations. We're former student.
Thank you all and good evening. Laura, I'm sorry my slides didn't make it for Stan Talk 9, maybe Stan Talk 10. It was wonderful to hear from Lauren, Kurt, and Ben about your impact that Stanley has had upon you, and thank you to Samant for asking me to speak. A little bit about myself. My name is Stephen Edwards. I'm a local architect, scenic designer, and artist, and I went to Stanley K through 8 and graduated the middle school in 2003. To be honest, I never thought this day would come for Chris Lewis. I've written his name in every year, or at least as close to it, for as long as I've known this award has existed. And while I can share many lessons from Chris, and all the times that he has shown up for me and other students, today we only have time for a few. Chris was my art teacher for 6 years of my time at Stanley until I entered the middle school, and has been my friend since I no longer had him as a teacher. Chris was instrumental in fostering my artistic drive and helped set me on the path that I've been on since I left Stanley. It was the little things that helped push me in my direction, from allowing students to construct things with real materials in his class, to asking me to help him set up sound systems and lighting for events at Stanley that set me on my theater career. Thinking back on my many conversations with Chris about art, one in particular comes to mind. I once asked Chris why he never put a title on any of his artwork. He mentioned to me that his philosophy as an artist is that art should be enjoyed by the viewer and allow them to see what they want in a piece. I think this is true for the way that we see people too. As such, I can only tell you what I see in Chris and why he is deserving of this award, but much like an untitled art piece, I know that you all have your own perspective and relationship with Chris that illustrates why he should be this year's Spirit of Stanley Award winner. I was a slow learner early on in my life, especially with reading, perhaps due to some undiagnosed learning disability. But Chris always had faith that it would come to me. Chris is the kind of teacher who took time out of his day to sit down and struggle with me while I figured out how to read. He wasn't a homeroom teacher, and this wasn't his job, but he knew that I needed extra support, and he wanted to be there for me. He knew that I needed a friend like him to sit and listen and work with me without judgment as I figured it out, which I finally did. Chris was also instrumental as I formed lifelong friendships and helped foster those friendships. It was in his classroom as a kindergartner that I met Zach Sig, my lifelong best friend and eventual officiant of my wedding. I don't remember much about meeting Zach, but I'm sure it must have been in Chris's classroom. Who else would have given kindergartners the space and trust that comes along with using a hammer and saws to build whatever we could imagine? And when things went awry and either Zach or I were not sharing the hammer well, unclear exactly who, I'm sure it was Chris who helped us to learn to share. Zach and I share hammers to this day. For kids like me, Chris has always been a respite for those who need a friend, need a creative outlet, and are having a hard time finding their place at Stanley and in the world. Chris is a testament that with kindness, fearless expression, and community, even the kids who are different can find the others and to find a place to belong joyously. As a longtime friend of mine said about Chris has the unique talent of creating a safe space for kids to show up exactly as they are. I never felt like I had to fit in or apologize for who I was. My experiences as a student in Chris's classroom have been invaluable to me throughout life, and I am so thankful to have had him as a teacher. In parting, I will leave you with just one more nugget of wisdom that Chris imparted upon me. I once asked him how he, as an artist, knew when one of his art pieces was complete. He paused and responded that he knew his work was done when a piece started getting worse instead of getting better with more changes. Much like his art, Chris has been able to consistently get better as a teacher, but I know the work is not yet done because he hasn't started to get worse. Thank you, Chris, for all that you have done for me and for countless students like me over the years, and may Stanley be blessed with many more years of having you be a part of this wonderful community. I am honored that I can help present this award to a man that means so much to me and to so many others. Thank you.
All right, this is. First of all, like I've had all these ideas reeling through my head about what to say, and it's like it could take forever. And I'm not going to take forever. I really didn't know what I was going to say tonight, and I decided I just was going to wait to hear what was going to be said about me to try to respond to that. And I kind of thought that Art was going to roast me, and so I had all kinds of things to go with that. But I think suffice to say, like all the ideas that I have about my experience at the school can be condensed down fairly easily so that we can all get out of here. When I found, Betsy found Stanley and started working here, and then I was in between jobs, and she said, "Why don't you come in and do some art with the kids?" And I was like, "Okay." So I came in and did some art with the kids, and Carolyn came and met me and stuff, and she was like, "Well, you should try out to be an intern." And I was like, okay. So I came in the next day and I tried out, and I was trying to make 5-year-olds write lyrics down for rap songs, and but everybody had a great time and everything. And then in the meeting, they're like, "Well, you really don't know much about education." And I was like, "Yeah, but I can learn." Like, yeah, they were like, "Yeah, you can learn. You're really good with kids." So I worked as an intern with Anne Breckenridge, and like I know like Anne Breckenridge. You guys, who's here? Right, you know that, right? She was a maniac, like far more of a maniac than I was, and I was like half of her age at that point. And we used to take turns. Like most of the time, I would get overwhelmed, and she's like, "Chris, you need to go down and get a cup of coffee and come back," because she brought kids who really needed support to this school, and started that whole tradition of like, we're going to really try to take some kids that are down and out and need help. And she, at this point, something happened recently where I was getting all these texts from people who were having a cabin camp reunion. Who are my cabin campers out there? I know there's a few, right? So so she had a camp like up in Conifer, and this was like 25 years out, and people are still getting together to celebrate her. It's amazing. Like that's one thing that really struck me. Like what an impact she had on people. And then the other thing that I have that's kind of a sour taste in my mouth is like she had an art barn at cabin camp, right? Cabin campers, I know there's a few out there, right? You remember the art barn? That's why my garage is called an art barn. It is not a barn. It's a garage. It's an art garage, right? Okay, so that's out of the way. Anyways, so I worked here for, I did my internship for like a year, and then at the end of the year, Betsy was like, okay, go find something else to do. And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm never leaving this place because honestly, Carolyn just created this environment where she brought people in that were great with kids, and apparently I was pretty good with kids, at least at that point. I was learning to be great with kids, and she just let them do what they want to do. Like she let them do their thing, and she allowed me to do my thing, and I was like, I'm never leaving this place. Like until they fire me, I'm not leaving this place. So Betsy relented, and it wound up being a huge, great experience for me and my family to have my whole family here, and my wife, and the great things that we did together and collaborated with. And we would go home at night and we could complain about the same person because we all knew that person. And then the other thing I will add to like Ben Brady's thing is like I actually gave him his start in acting with this. Patty was doing the plays, and we were gonna do Damn Yankees, and then someone told her, you can't just like do a play like without paying for the rights. The whole school could get sued. She's like, oh, we have to do something. We have to write a play. And she said, Chris, let's get the kids together, and we got all the ideas. And Patty inadvertently said, you can come up with any crazy ideas and give them to Chris, and he will make a play out of it. And she said, like thumb wrestling, something like that. So literally, like 95% of the kids wrote in they wanted to have a play about thumb wrestling, right? And then there was a percentage of kids who were like, we want to have like basketball players, and then there was like another group of kids that wanted to have like the rock band, right? So I took all these ideas and melded them all together and made basically like a John Waters musical for children, and we all had a great time. And Ben got thrown out of a window. I thought he was the guy that was throwing people out of the window, but I really got into all kinds of trouble for this play. Like there was, and apparently no one really understood what was happening. I mean, Ben, did you understand what was happening in that?
Romeo and Juliet.
It was Romeo and Juliet story, right? I thought it was brilliant. The kids all had a great time, and I was never allowed to do a play again. So suffice to say that the kids have kept me young and kept my spirit bright, and I love teaching them. I love my group of kids that I travel with, why they are with me and hang out, and I try to draw upon their ideas and make their dreams come true. And it's been an incredible place for me to be. And I love you all, and I thank you all for providing me this opportunity, and the kids too. All right. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for a wonderful night. And thank you to our speakers. Thank you to Laura. Thank you to our Office of Community Engagement, to Jason in the booth, Javier. There's some people who make this night possible. So it is such a special night for us to just to see. Like this is like that longitudinal study of like what happens with Stanley students and trying to see where they end up, and also to say like what defines Stanley, and it's our people. And there is nobody like Chris Lewis. I mean, he is just so extraordinary. And so, Chris, I want to make sure you get this here, and I want to make sure we get some pictures of your family and our speakers here. But thank you all for being part of this evening. It is so much more special having you here. And I hope you all continue to stay connected here. Come back and visit more. Alumni parents, don't be strangers as well. We love having you all here. And I wish you all a great night. So thank you, everybody. Stay in talks now.